Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you. Thank you for being here. What a beautiful week it's been in South by, right? It's been absolutely amazing weather, especially if you come from New York. So I'm Richard James Burgess. I'm the president and CEO of A2IM, and I'm so thrilled to be moderating this panel with some of my favorite people and some of the great labels, great independent labels of all time, really. So we have, on the far end, we have Ghazi, and Ghazi runs Empire. He co-founded Empire, or founded Empire, and he's done amazing work with them. They have artists like Kendrick Lamar, XXX Tentacion, and Cardi B, and under Ghazi's leadership, Empire's exploded around the world. I mean, it's really a phenomenon. It started in 2010. And now they're in Africa, and they do dance music, they do hip-hop. It's a phenomenon what he's created. And Ghazi's a graduate of San Francisco State in music technology, and he was director of urban music at In-Grooves before launching Empire. So welcome, Ghazi. Thank you. And next to Ghazi, we have Melanie Sheehan. Melanie started at Sonic Boom Records in Seattle, and now she's the general manager of Rough Trade Records. And I tell everybody that I think my first sale of a record as a DIY artist was to Rough Trade Records in the Portobello Road in 1976. So I go back a long way with Rough Trade, and Rough Trade goes back a very long way. Melanie was a project manager at Secretly, and in 2014 she joined the Beggars Group as a project manager. She's overseen campaigns for Spoon, Yola Tango, and Grimes. And since 2017, she's been the U.S. label manager for Rough Trade Records, managing releases for Warpaint, Parquet Courts, and Princess Nokia. So please welcome Melanie. And just to my right, Miss Pat. Miss Pat Chin is a legend in the world of reggae, but in the world in general. She has an amazing book, and if you haven't had a chance to read it, is it for sale today?
Yeah,
it is at the bookstore.
Yes, it's in the bookstore.
You have to see it. It's really incredible, and she's an absolute phenomenon. So Miss Pat founded VP Records with her late husband, Vincent Randy Chin, and it's a reggae label. It started as Randy's Records in Studio 17. It started in Kingston, Jamaica, and they moved to New York City in the 70s, establishing VP in Queens, in Jamaica, Queens. And the label has championed reggae globally, working with Sean Paul, Beres Hammond, and Maxi Priest. Miss Pat's still extremely active, and you definitely should get her book if you can. I have it, and it's the one I is there a smaller version? Because the one I have is gigantic.
A smaller version.
Yes. It's like you could kill somebody with the one I have. It's so big, but it's absolutely amazing. So I thought where we would start is with the founding stories. So, Ghazi, what motivated you to establish Empire in 2010? And what were some of the initial challenges you faced?
In all honesty, all I wanted to do was help my friends. So that's kind of how it started. I was a pretty prominent mix engineer in San Francisco and a producer. And a lot of the albums that I was working on weren't seeing the light of day properly, or they weren't being accounted to properly. And I said, I gotta figure out how to fix this. And then that's kind of how it started. But it was really just about like fixing things at home first.
Yeah, it's the best way, right? Find a problem and solve it. Yeah, well, thank you for that. Melanie, can you tell me something about the origin stories of Rough Trade? Because it's a pretty long and winding road.
Yes,
that's gone down.
Before my time. Jeff Travis is the founder and still owner of Rough Trade Records. And he would tell this story more charmingly than me, but he doesn't like to talk about himself. So I believe when he got out of college, he was a school teacher, but he's been obsessed with music his whole life and is an avid record shopper. So he came to the States, I think was in San Francisco, bought so many records and multiple copies of records that you couldn't find back in England, shipped it all back, and was like, what am I going to do with all of this? I should be like helping other people find records like this in England, and just decided to open his own shop. And basically that's how it started, just putting having local bands come in. It was like the beginning of the punk scene, and people were trying to put out their own music. So bands would come in and be like, "Can you help us like put out a 7-inch or a 12-inch?" And just helping people get all of those records to other record stores all around England. And that's kind of how Rough Trade started as a store in like 1976. By 1979, they were pressing their own 7-inches and helping out bands. Augustus Pablo was, I think, Rough Trade 001 on the catalog. This punk band called Metal Urbane, Stiff Little Fingers, like just bands that were around that needed help. And so they kind of just naturally turned into a record label at that point.
Thank you. It was a very opportune time. It was right at the beginning of the British punk movement, 1976, if I recall.
Yeah, he was very into the punk and reggae at the time in London.
Yeah, well, that takes us to Miss Pat. So, Miss Pat, it's an amazing story when you started VP in Kingston, Jamaica, and then you moved to New York City. And I'm curious what the challenges were in moving, because, I mean, Jamaica's all about reggae, and Jamaica, Queens was not all about reggae when you first moved here. So how did you deal with that?
Well, when I came here in 1977, it was very difficult. They knew Bob Marley, but they didn't know all the superstars that we had back home.
Yeah.
So it was very challenging trying to convince them that not only Bob Marley, but we had so many other upcoming rising stars that sing in Jamaica. But on top of that, I came here because I did business in Jamaica for 20 years before. I sold on the counter, so I got to know all the producers, the singers, everybody in the music. So when I came here, being a woman, trying to sell reggae music, and being a Chinese woman, it was very hard for me.
Right.
Because I didn't realize that a woman could produce records and sell records. It was like a man's job. But that then in Jamaica, it was just a business.
Yeah.
So it was difficult, very difficult. And having my accent was another thing because I speak Patois.
Yeah.
And I grew up Patois in Jamaica. So it was very hard being a woman to sell, to sell records. But I knew my craft very well, and I think my biggest problem was just convincing them that we had so many more records to convince them to buy.
Yeah.
And that's how I started here.
It was a hard sell in the U.S. too. I mean, it seemed like the UK picked up on reggae much faster than the U.S. did.
There was quite a few American companies here that sell reggae music. But I think my niche was trying to broaden the base of reggae with different artists, you know. That was very popular in Jamaica at that time.
Yeah.
Barry Salmon, Sizzler, Yellowman, Buju Banton. We took all those titles with us here.
Yeah.
That was not known here, and broadened the base,
Yeah.
I think. By helping them to see that more records are being made in Jamaica, sometimes 10, 15 releases a week came out because we're so gifted with music.
Yeah.
Music and food and sports is our thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a huge thing. Well, thank you for that. So Ghazi, I'm curious, you've grown Empire like crazy, and it seems to me that a large part of it is about artist development, and you've taken, I think, a fairly unusual approach to that. Could you tell us about how you approach artist development and nurturing artists, growing their careers?
Being the origin story of Empire was always about independence, and so at the very beginning we didn't really have any money. We were just kind of rubbing pennies together, so you had no choice but to do artist development because you weren't able to acquire the services of artists that were already selling a lot of records.
Right.
So that was the origin story, and it was something that we stuck to, not only because it felt authentic to us, but it just felt like the right thing to do was to develop talent, especially kind of the way I grew up and the way I see the world. I think I firmly believe in things like paying it forward,
Yeah.
you know, being the change you want to see. So I wanted to uplift my community, and what better way to do it than to start from the bottom with the artists and really challenge them to be the best versions of themselves and learn how to build a business off of their brands. So that was entirely successful for us really early, is finding pockets of talent where other people couldn't find them or where other people weren't looking. So we were looking at Latin America before reggaeton was a thing. We were looking at Africa before Afrobeats became mainstream. We were deep in the trenches on hip hop when other labels and companies were abandoning their urban departments. I was even diving into reggae when a lot of people were saying reggae couldn't sell records. And so some of it is based on your passion and affinity for culture and music, and then some of it is also business practice and trying to find that happy medium of how to keep the lights on and still be able to do the things that keep your spirit full. And so for me, that was always rooted in legacy. If you find things that you can build a legacy that you're proud of, then chances are success will be a byproduct of that. And with success comes money and accolades and all the other things that come with it. Magnify that with a crazy work ethic, and you can kind of accomplish anything. You know, I was always kind of one of them kids that I'll go to the edge of the earth to do something if I have to. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just tell me where to show up, and I'll probably be there before you.
Yeah, I think it strikes me that probably your background as a producer really helped as well, right? Because you take it from the music more than from the data.
Yeah, I started making music when I was 14, my freshman year in high school. And like I tell everybody, I wasn't very good at it until I was about 18 or 19. We always talk about the 10,000 hours in the gym, and I probably put 100,000 hours in. Because wherever I was deficient, I had to make up with it in work ethic. And then eventually, you know, relationships and everything else falls into place, and you kind of create an origin story and a mission statement for yourself.
Thank you. Well, you've certainly done that. There's no question about that. Melanie, you rough trade, you really dig deep and in the cracks, and you find artists that, you know, just nobody else finds. So can you tell me about how rough trade goes about it, and consistently over the years as well, right?
Yeah, I feel like the rough trade ethos is like the excitement that comes out of discovery. So many of the things that we put out are things that haven't been on a label before or are a brand new artist. That excitement, I think, kind of makes up for how difficult it is to sign mostly brand new artists and have to grow them from the ground up. But that's how the label started originally. Johnny Marr came into the store and gave Jeff a demo tape, and it was the Smiths. So he was so excited about it, he signed it immediately. Same thing happened with the Strokes many years later. They were signed to Rough Trade in the UK before they had a label in the US. They just find things that are exciting to them and want to go for it. So I think it's all sometimes doesn't make sense business-wise because they only want to sign things they really like, whether it makes money or not, which I totally respect. And most of the time it works out, so it's fine. But I kind of love that ethos of like they have to actually love it. They've never signed anything just for a check, you know? And then it's just getting to know that artist. I like that we do very like custom campaigns that are created around an artist's like vision, their style, their personality. Like no two campaigns are exactly alike. You know, you really form what you're saying and doing about somebody based on that person. I feel like there's a million musicians, there's a million bands, and I always say like the difference between everybody else and you or the person you're working with is them themselves, the person. So you want to bring that out as much as possible and celebrate who that person is and what they're bringing to the table and their take on things.
Yeah, I think that's a special source of independence, really, isn't it? That you're really looking to find the unique qualities in that artist rather than kind of have another Me Too artist, as it were, somebody who sounds like whatever's happening at that moment. And you certainly do that. I think everybody on the stage does that, all three of you. So, Miss Pat, how do you approach it? I mean, you, first off, reggae itself was a difficult sell for many years, and probably still is to some degree, right? And how do you choose your artists, and how do you help them to develop?
Well, I should say from back home in 1958, I think we all aspire to help others to develop their talents. And there were so many young singers. So my husband used to work with the jukebox company in Jamaica, and that's how we started. Then we built a studio so that they could use the studio to develop their talent, and helping them and nurturing them and giving them hope that they can do well and have a career out of their music. That's where we started. I think the most important thing is to really inspire them, help them, and just give them a place where they can showcase their talent. And I've done that for so many years.
Right.
And back home, there's so many young artists that just need a break. So when my husband built a studio, it's like $20 per hour, but if they only had $5, we still let them go to do their singing. Pray for them to make a hit, and we can get back the money. And we do that so many times. So it was just, helping them to really inspire them to do well. And when they do well, we feel so happy because we share in their joy too. When they do well, we do well. But my focus was always helping others. I think I got that from my parents, giving back and giving to the community and helping others to achieve their goals.
Did you have in-house producers, or did your husband produce, or did you produce?
Yeah, we rented a studio, so there was a lot of producers, singers, musicians. And I was lucky to be selling on the counter for 20 years. So I get to know everyone. I knew the singers from Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, Bunny Wailers, you name it. I knew all of them personally because they were just coming up themselves. I knew Chris Blackwell when he releases his first LP, My Boy Lollipop, in 1962. So I get to know the artists on a different level, where they would come in the store, renting the studio, or just customer coming in to buy music. And I learned a lot by being on the counter, selling every day for 20 years. I knew all the music, all the producers, all the version, everything in music I learned. So I was like, I talk it, I read it, I see, I do everything with music. So that was my goal to help others to develop their talent.
That's
and
really fabulous.
Thank
you.
And my husband was the same.
Yeah. And you're still doing it.
Yes, I think so.
That's so great.
Yes.
So we've obviously lived through, a lot of changes over the last 20, 30 years. Technologies, the way we make music, the way we distribute music, and it's been a pretty, I don't know what you call it, volatile time, I guess, and it feels like we're going into an even more volatile time. So, and nobody has used technology better than you guys. I mean, you're really very ahead. I know, conversations we've had in the past, you're really up on what's going on and the new techniques and how to. It seems like every year it's different, right? So, could you tell us about how you've approached that, how you've integrated digital tools and data analysis into your operations?
If you don't mind, if I slightly deviate from your question.
Please do. You're always welcome to do that.
I think it's more important to discuss present and future than past, because most of the things that have transpired in the last 10 years, that technology is deprecating now. And we're about to head into a new frontier with AI. Yesterday, I was speaking at an AI conference in Las Vegas. And I think from a technological perspective, the rate of acceleration on technology is like nothing we've ever seen is about to happen.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how many of the people in the audience have used any of the tools that are coming. Some of these tools are amazing and empowering, and some of these tools have potential to be entirely destructive. So I would say that the next couple years for the creative community are going to be very pivotal in terms of how we protect creatives, how we continue to protect intellectual property rights, transformative works, derivative works, sampling, royalty attribution models, guardrails for AI that don't allow it to just run wild and take people's IP, the stakeholders that are involved, the ones that are building those companies, that are training on our data, holding them accountable to pay for the construct, but also giving them a loose enough leash to be able to innovate. So it's a very careful balance. And I think those are the things that we should be focused on as an industry, because every 15 to 20 years we have a format change. That's, we went from 8-track or from vinyl to 8-track to tapes to CDs to downloads to streaming. This is like nothing we've ever seen before.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of these models that are far more advanced than the ones that are available to the public because of the way they're trained, and the music coming out of some of these systems is pretty damn good.
Yeah, I've heard some stuff that it just blows my mind. I think I listen to it and I think this is as good as anything I could have ever made as a producer.
And I will add one more thing to that, and this is kind of just for people to just to chew on and think about, is that traditionally the music business follows the US and the UK when it comes to law. If you look at like the history of the record business, this is entirely from scratch. So just because we figure it out in the US or we figure it out in the UK doesn't mean the rest of the world will follow.
Yeah.
Different countries will have different construct. This is not trademark where you just go apply for the Madrid Protocol and then 40 countries are trademarked all at once.
Yeah.
This is completely different. It's completely wide open. We have no idea what other people will do in other parts of the world and what that will look like. And so, with change comes opportunity, but I think there's going to be a level of volatility that we've never seen before.
Agreed. I mean, as you know, A2AM is working on this, and to your point, you only need one country to do a text and data mining exception, and that affects all of us because all of our music's everywhere now. Everything that's ever out can, and I believe has been trained on already. Question is whether people can use that without paying the creators of that music, without compensating for training the models. But by the way, to your other point about the format changes, if you measure it right back from Edison, from the cylinder, you can see that the format changes have sped up. Each one's gotten a little bit faster. I mean, we only had CDs for less than 20 years, 1982 to 2000, basically. And I know they still exist, but we were into streaming or downloads and then streaming. So, this is going to get very fast. It's going to move very quickly. So thank you for your comment on that. So Melanie, with Rough Trade, I mean, musically you're sort of almost kind of traditional in the way you choose the music, but you've obviously had to adapt as well. So how's that worked for you in terms of downloads and streaming? And
I mean, I don't want to follow up this answer. This was really good. He nailed it. But yeah, I think it is all about being hyper-vigilant to what's going on. I think historically the music industry has not always been caught up at the rate that things are happening, and we fall behind sometimes, and that's when we get into trouble. So I do think being hyper-vigilant, being on top of what's happening next is really important. I think we've always been also just good at being flexible, being open-minded, knowing that something new is coming, and figuring out a way to embrace it that works for the artist and the company. When streaming came along and digital, and never really giving up on the physical format. We all still love to make records, and we still sell CDs, but to really embrace that space and move into it thoughtfully. And we're really lucky to be partnered with Beggars Group, which has been, I think, really great at moving into that space thoughtfully and figuring out how to make it work the best for us as independent labels, and using that group strength and the A2IM strength to kind of get the most out of it for all of us.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Pat, I mean, it's, I know every genre and different markets are different in terms of formats, so how's reggae in terms of the new digital formats and, traditional vinyl, CDs? You've had to adapt too, but your market's going to be slightly different than anybody else's. It's going to be slightly different than Rough Trade, and I'm sure slightly different than Empire's as well.
Well, I've seen the changes all through my 60 years in music. It was first a little small 45, then it becomes 78, then it becomes cassette, then CD, then digital, now it's streaming. It's always changing.
Yeah,
For you to be a part of it, the change is very important.
yeah,
We have to, I thank God my grandchildren are in it because they know a little more about the streaming. But I think, as what Ghazi said, we have to protect our products and we have to protect what we own. And it's very hard sometimes because although we have laws here, what about the other countries that doesn't have laws?
yeah,
So I think where we are, it's very good, changes is very good, but at the same time, we have to learn how to protect what we have. And right where we are, if I couldn't text, I wouldn't be able to talk to my grandkids. So I have to get on board and learn everything also.
yeah,
And I'm blessed to have my grandkids working in the business because I talk with them daily about what's going on, the big global in music. And it's so fascinating to me that I don't have to make a record, pack it, ship it. You touch a little button and it's all in South Africa. It's all over the world. So that's a big change. And I like the new technology. I'm hoping that after time it will be settled. We don't know if it's AI or whatever it is. Whatever business is in music will be there.
yeah. Yeah, in the end, it's the music that's important, not the way we get it to people, but the way we get it to people can affect the music, because if the artist can't make a living, then we don't really have a business, do we?
Right.
But thank you for that. So I know you're all expanding globally. You've all reached out globally, and obviously, there's a whole big wide world out there outside of America, even though we're still the biggest market. I know it's really been important to you, Ghazi. Your global expansion has been quite remarkable, and you've gone into some markets that many people have not gone into. Could you tell us about that?
I always felt for us to be competitive and remain competitive, I'd have to go places early. Being an owner-founder, I can take risks on things that might not show up in the stat sheet for quite some time.
Right.
So I was always a fan of just planting seeds and just nurturing really early. So plus I'm fascinated by other cultures and other genres of music and a lot of the genre bending that's going on. And I wanted to be on the front end of that. I had someone come in my studio the other day. We've built this really amazing studio in San Francisco, and I was building a live room. And in the live room, I put 18-inch monitors that I flushed into the wall, and I built this really high-end live room with a bunch of keyboards and stuff. And they walked in, they're like, "Wow, you're gonna make a lot of hits out of this room." And I looked over at him and I said, "You're thinking too small." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "We want to invent new genres out of this room."
Yeah.
And so I've always had this very global idea in my mind. And if you go read some of my old interviews that I did, some of the first interviews I did for Billboard and stuff, I would always say, they would ask, what's your goal for the year? And I would say global expansion. Mm-hmm. And after a while, it started to sound silly because people didn't know what I was talking about. And then years later, you look up and we have employees in probably 30 countries now. And company went from 10 employees to 250, and we're in all these global markets. We probably speak more languages than any other company. The cultural diversity is amazing. And I think it's very representative of the repertoire that we've acquired and we distribute and market and promote. And so I think that diversity in all aspects breeds greater art.
Were you thinking that when you came up with the name Empire?
So the name Empire, I think for a lot of people, sounds like a divide and conquer. And for me, it was unite and multiply. How do I build an ecosystem where I don't have to depend on anybody else to survive? I used to always use this analogy early on because I'm a foundational person. I always believe in building foundation first. And so that's why we built a distribution company before we built a label, because I used to say no umbilical cords. I don't want to depend on anybody else for survival. And if I'm distributed by somebody else, then I'm at the mercy of their data, and I'm also at the mercy of their accounting and the revenue. So if I build direct relationships to the DSPs, I'll never be at the mercy of anybody except my own data, my own tools, my own software, my own personnel, so on and so forth. So the idea of Empire was always self-contained ecosystem.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. You know, it's funny. I was when my kids were young and they were starting to get into music. They asked me how do you get from nothing to something, kind of thing. And I said, you know, big things start in small places. And I actually took them on a tour of England and took them to all the places where, you know, huge movements like punk and the Blitz movement and the New Romantic and the Beatles came out of to show them, you know, this is where it started. So I was thinking that about Rough Trade, Melanie, because I was thinking about stepping into, it was a tiny little store in Portobello Road where Rough Trade started, and now you're global, so.
Yeah, but still there. Also.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing, right? And so tell me about your, you know, Rough Trade's approach to global expansion and.
Yeah, I think the goal with Rough Trade, even from that very beginning of Jeff saying, you know, I want to get this music out to everybody in England, then turned into getting the music out even further to Europe, to South America, to the US. Like, it was really just like a slow evolution of growth. The store turned into a label. The label morphed a co-op distribution company where a bunch of tiny labels like Rough Trade pooled their money together and would help distribute their own records all around the country because nobody else was doing it. And they were hanging out with major label people, and they were like, these people don't know anything more than we do. They're winging it just as much as we are, so we can do it. So I think starting there and just learning how to reach people in their own country and then taking that and applying it on a global scale, I think was really important. Starting about 20 years ago, they really, really made the US more of a priority and a focus. You know, it's always been considered a very UK-centric niche label, and we've, you know, grown many amazing artists out of the UK, but they also want to have amazing artists in the US. So that's where the Strokes came in, and a lot of other bands that they picked up along the way out of New York. And I think that was a big impetus for when partnering with Beggars in 2007, being able to reach literally anywhere in the globe at that point, and having like a real New York office that served North America, and that's where I got to come in and help out.
Yeah, it's amazing where you've gone, and I think the fact that you had the live venue in the store in Brooklyn, right? That's an amazing thing too.
Yes. Technically, the label and the store are run by different people now.
Yeah.
So I have to say that I don't have anything to do with that.
Right.
But we are still, we still partner with them on all of our promotions. We do things together. We do exclusive pressings with them. Like, we're all still friends and family. But yeah, the fact that Rough Trade, the shop, has come to the U.S. as well, I think has only, helped both of us in the branding sense.
Yeah. So, Ms. Pat, it feels to me like VP sort of has brought Jamaican culture to the world. I mean, so how do you see that? Was that part of it? Because you really haven't diversified away from reggae and Jamaican culture. I mean, you really stuck to your guns, haven't you?
Yes, we have stick by what we know. We did soca, calypso.
Right.
So every year we put out a soca gold, a reggae gold, and it's strictly the best. We have sustained it because we try to stick to our culture. And also, as I said, through the years I've seen changes. And also we have developed different branches all over the world. We bring up different artists to showcase their talent. We have festival every year. We do free concert in Radio City. We do free concert in Central Park. We do a lot of things to embrace the culture and the music. And very rewarding for us to see how much people love our music. And as I said, we have branches all over.
Yeah.
And we sustain ourselves because we want to stay independent. Because not only selling, but we have to give back and to embrace our culture. I always want to give back and to embrace the culture that we started with, which is my own country, Jamaica. Yeah. So every year we give back and create festivals. We do a reggae show in the park for 10 years now. which we have at least 20,000 people coming in. And we do a lot of things to really bring up the artists to showcase their talents.
Yeah.
And that's what we have been doing many, many years now.
It's amazing.
And of course, giving back to music education and to develop their talents. And proceeds from my book goes to the artists and the artist development. We created a foundation so that we can give back more than we have been giving.
Thank you. That's fantastic. By the way, I used to work out at a gym in London, which was in Brixton, and so a lot of Jamaicans there. And I found out that you can do any song reggae style, it seems.
Yes, definitely. That's what we're
It's
good
an
at.
amazingly adaptable form of music.
Over
I
the
love
years.
it. So I have a question. We're getting toward the question era part of the panel, but I thought I would ask you all to sum up in one sentence what makes your label indispensable to your artists. What would you say? We start with you, Miss Pat. We'll go the other way this time.
I would say relationship is very important, to nurture them, to help them to develop their talents, and to give back. It's very important that you see where they're from, you see how you can help the people, and also to really nurture them. Relationship is better than even. Relationship and money comes the same. Because if you don't have a relationship with somebody to help them to grow, when they grow, you will also grow. I think relationship is number one. Having a good relationship. Able to talk with people, meet them where they are, and help them to develop and grow. And as you grow, they'll grow with you.
Thank you. Melanie?
I think in one sentence, I would probably just say artistic freedom is the thing that they have with Rough Trade. Artists are extremely involved in their campaigns. They get to decide yes or no. We're there to guide them and give them, everything they need and tell them what we think they should be doing. They always have the right to say yes or no on everything and to make it exactly what their vision is.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's something that sets the independents apart in general. That's a really great point. Ghazi, what do you think? By the way, it can be a long sentence. It doesn't have to be one sentence.
I'll give you 2 words, empowering autonomy. That probably makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Because it kind of runs the gamut.
Yeah.
Transparency, partnership,
Yeah.
joint ventures, artistic creativity and freedom, just empowering autonomy.
Yeah.
I always tell people autonomy is the wind in my sails, so it's the same thing I want to bestow upon
How do
our
you
partners.
timing? How do you calculate the timing? How do you get that right?
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
it's where science and creativity meet.
Yeah, exactly. It's like trying to time the market right. If you get it right, you do great. If you don't get it right, not so good. Well, thank you all. I think we can move into the question phase now, if you like. So, first question up is, what are you all listening to right now? So, Ghazi, you want to start?
Like, what are you not listening to right now?
Yeah, exactly. It's as we enter the era of massive dilution, I'm primarily listening to the things that I'm working on in the studio. So being that I spend so much of my time on corporate stuff, the thing that keeps me connected to why I got into this business in the first place, I strategically put my studio about 5 minutes away from where I live. So after I tuck the kids in, I can just slide right down the street and listen to music till like 1 or 2 in the morning. So I'm in the studio a good 3-4 nights of the week, just listening to music and primarily the stuff that we're working on. If an artist is going to do a partnership with me, then it makes sense for me to listen to their music before I go listen to commercial music that's on another label. I don't really care what other labels got going on. I got my hands full with my people.
Yeah. It's important. Melanie, what are you listening to?
Oh my gosh, I'm all over the place. I'm kind of obsessed with a lot of artists coming out of Asia right now. It's really exciting to me to see them being able to come to the U.S. and play shows and do more and be more present and accessible. I love Atarashi Gakko. I love Mesa Moans is a new artist coming up. That's really lovely. I think everyone should check out. Yeah, and just seeing just music from Japan, Korea, China, everywhere, like being more present in regular life is great. I also listen to a lot of like Korean psych folk music from like the 60s and 70s, so it's not even all recent. I'm just like all over the place, but yeah, that's my fave right now.
That's great. Miss Pat, what are you listening to these days?
You know, I've always have my ears to the street
Yeah.
and know what's going on.
Yeah,
And I have a lot of friends that just call me up and just tell me things.
that's
Who
great.
is hot, and I keep my ears to the street.
Good.
I also know that independent, I like to stay independent because it gives me a chance to be in control of my own label,
Yeah,
and also to see the progress that the artist has made, because when they do good, we do good also. I feel very blessed to be in an age where I can see the changes, and I can also see the benefits from making a 45 records and packing it and streaming is good. Content is good because people who did not get a chance to showcase themselves when they were younger, now they have a chance by the streaming that people can see them,
yeah,
not only singing, but see them performance.
right.
So I think content is very good because people want to see live music. When you stream, it's like you're going to a concert and you see the people. That feeling is there.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got a few more questions here. I've actually got to step off for a second, but I see one question here is, what advice do you have for small business owners and aspiring artists to grow in their brand? And perhaps you could take that, Ghazi, and then go through, and I'll be right back.
I'm a big infrastructure person, so anything foundational. Learn the fundamentals before you try to do the fancy stuff. A lot of people want to skip steps, especially in society today. Everything is moving 100 miles an hour. But if you want to build something sustainable, you can't skip the steps that matter. And a lot of people give broad stroke advice and then don't get into specifics. So to be more specific, after you establish what it is that you're trying to accomplish specifically, know exactly what it is that you're trying to accomplish so that you can build a path to get there. And that path involves things like finance, tax. What is your corporate structure? Are you being compliant? Have you set up your trademarks? Have you set up your entities properly? Are you a U.S. company? Are you going to be an international company? What does that look like? How do you acquire the personnel to run these different verticals? What is your legal construct? Because you have to have a legal team, whether it's one that you outsource or one that you hire internally. And once you build all the foundational stuff, then you can start thinking about all the other stuff in terms of from a scaling. But you can't scale something unless you actually build a lot of the foundation. So it really just depends on what it is, like I said, that you're trying to accomplish. And once you set that goal, then build the institutional foundation, and then you can go from there.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think what I would say, and I feel like Miss Pat and I were kind of talking about this backstage, is the motivation to always keep going. The work that you're doing, you have to love doing it, and you have to want to do it every day, and there isn't ever a point where you get to lean back and be like, I did it, I'm done, it's going well. If it's going well, you have to do even more. So it's constantly being on top of what you're doing, and just like having that, I guess, work ethic of, and we say this to our artists as well, once you achieve some success, there is no leaning back. It's all leaning forward. Like every time you put out an album, you have to do all of that work all over again. We have to do all of that work all over again. And so it's like every day, and you have to have that motivation. You have to love doing it, or you're going to hate it because it's all you have to do every day. So I would just say, like, make sure you have that motivation in you to really do this thing that you are passionate about, you know.
Thank you. Ms. Pat?
I would say that they need to work hard. They have to love what they do. They have to know really if they really like what they're doing or love what they're doing. We can only help them, but they have to help themselves too. And they have to be willing to work hard. Because one hit isn't enough. They have to come 2, 3, 4, 5 times to stay in business. So my advice to them is that make sure that whatever you're doing, don't think a one hit is going to make you famous or rich. It has to be consistent, and they have to work hard in whatever they want to do, because the music company cannot do it all. They themselves have to go out and sing, even free, to promote themselves. And I find that many times, if they make one hit, they think that will last forever. It doesn't work like that. You have to be consistent. You have to work hard. And you have to really put your all in it. Love what you do and love what you do and do what you love.
Yeah.
Work hard in whatever you're doing.
The best advice ever, I think. So the next question is, with all the emerging tech and trends impacting the industry, especially AI, how have you seen the relationships between artists and labels evolve? And how, you touched on this before, guys, but how do you think it's going to evolve?
Oh, that's a very complicated question to answer because it can go in like 80 different directions. I think the most important thing where you have to start is with transparency. The artists and the labels have to be transparent with one another about what it is that they're trying to accomplish and what their motives are. And once you do that, then you're on the same page. And if you're on the same page, then you could figure out how to navigate. You could jump in the same car and head the same direction. So I think that, again, entering an era where the technology is going to move really fast. Some people are going to have the tools, some people are not. Some are going to have the knowledge of how to navigate, some are not. So I think the most important thing is to surround yourself with people that are passionate about your craft and also knowledgeable of the business so that they can help you get to where you need to go. I oftentimes tell artists, you know, I'm not the driver, you are, but I'm the navigation. I'm your GPS. I can get you there. I can keep you from crashing out. And I might even give you a shortcut and avoid traffic. But ultimately, you have to set the destination for me so I could be the best partner possible to you. Yeah. So I think that relationship is entirely important, and the transparency and the passion and all the other things that come with it, the integrity, will establish how we're able to navigate these trends.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And Melanie, and same thing, but I think, you know, if you lose the relationship between the artist and the label, you really have, it can be pretty disastrous, right? I've seen that happen. And how do you deal with it? Or how, you know, what do you think about this relationship?
Yeah, I think everything Kazi says is absolutely true. The transparency, the trust level. I think we've seen the evolution of relationships between labels and artists over the years, and I think it only gets better. It's seen more as a business partnership now. It's not like we own you and this kind of thing, which I don't think indie labels ever had that mentality, but it feels more equal. And, you know, it is about, like, I believe we started doing this, and the Beggars Group labels all started doing this, but you know, a lot of contracts were made years and years before digital and streaming. And we go back and we update those contracts to make sure people are getting paid. You know, it's not this advantageous, like, well, it's not in there, so we don't have to do it. You know, it's like we want to keep the relationship with those artists. One day those contracts are going to expire and they're going to be free to go somewhere else. And if we were looking out for them, they'll stick with us and we can keep celebrating their catalog and working with them. So I think all of that is really important. Sometimes business partnerships dissolve, people are on different pages and we go in different directions, and that's totally fine, and it's a free market, and if you're an artist and you want to go to a different label, that's absolutely your choice. And I like that people aren't locked into things anymore. You can sign a deal for a single, you can sign a deal for 1 album, 3 albums, whatever you want. I feel like there's more conversations happening now about what works best for each artist and each label individually.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sometimes I worry about that because although it's really a great thing with the independents, it also means a lot of artists get developed by an independent and then snapped up by a major, and I'm sure that's a problem for everybody, right? But it seems to me, Ms. Pat, you have a sort of almost family relationship with your artists. Is that how you see it?
Yes, I think we have a strong relationship. At the same time, we have to be fair. As Melanie said, we have to go back sometime. We did just shake hands, but there's no more shake hands. We have to go by the rules and be fair and honest and to tell them what's going on. And at times it's very difficult because they only see one side. But they have to remember we are the investor. They have the voice, but we are investing in them that they can make a hit. And it takes a lot of chances. Maybe do put out 10 LPs, 2 LP sales, and 8 is gone by the wayside. So they don't think about those things.
Yeah.
But because we are the investors, we have to make sure that they're willing to work their label or their song as well as we are. We are the investor and they're the singers. We have to be fair to them, honest with them. And the relationship works because sometimes they want to go on their own. So we allow them to go on their own. Sometimes they come right back to us because they didn't realize how hard it is to make a hit. And all the things that go in when you have a release out. Everybody have to go on board to promote that record, talk about that record, get the record play, take them here to radio show, take them here to do interview. It's a lot that goes on when you're developing an artist.
Yeah.
So they have to know that they have a part to play in the big scheme of things too, not only the investors.
Yeah, it's definitely a partnership, isn't it? So, Ghazi, there's a question specifically for you. What was it like working with Kendrick Lamar on Section 80, and what advice would you give to an up-and-coming independent artist in hip-hop?
Releasing Section 80 was a pivotal moment for the company, and I think to some degree a pivotal moment for hip-hop, not only because it was a great album, but because of the construct. And what I mean by that is, when we released that album at that time period, sites like Live Mixtapes and that PIF were really important sites to hip-hop as a genre. And what those were they were free download sites where people would go. There was a lot of traffic on those pages, and you would just put your albums up, and people would give away free music and then go tour off the music. We convinced Top at the time, Top Dog, who runs Top Dog Entertainment, that human nature dictates that some people will pay something for the same thing that might be for free. And so I convinced them to simultaneously release the album on iTunes at the same time that it was up for free on Live Mixtapes. And he was like, I don't see how this is gonna sell if it's up for free. And I said, well, not everybody's a Live Mixtapes consumer. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who just want the convenience of clicking buy and finding that album on their iTunes library and in their iPhone at the time. And there's a lot of people who just want to support. Yeah. And we see that now, fast forward 12 years later or whatever, and you see a lot of people now that have the pay what you want model, where they go to their fans and say, pay me for my album, whatever you want. We were already thinking that way 12, 13 years ago, that there was fans out there that would pay for something that was for free. What we did then was we strategically planned what day we would release the album on iTunes, and at that time period, Tuesdays were release days, not Fridays. And so we decided to drop it on an off day on a Thursday, and we drove the album to #1 on iTunes. And that did a lot for us as a company because there were so many other artists that were giving away music for free that now all of a sudden wanted to sell their music. Mm-hmm. And so it was one of those pivotal moments where you were able to show people the value of monetization. And that was a realization in hip-hop that a lot of people didn't have, and it was like a light bulb went off, and it was like, oh, I don't have to give this away for free. I can actually make money off of it. And it was definitely a stake. It was like a line in the sand. It was like, this is how we're going to move forward from here. And the advice that I would give an upcoming artist, to answer the second part of this question, is to just be authentic and be true to who you are as an artist. Doesn't matter what other people do. Do what's the best version of you. And if people like it, they'll latch onto it. And if they don't like it, I don't really know what to tell you. That's just the way art works sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely, yeah. You can always try something else, but you got to be true to yourself. I 100% agree with that. Miss Pat, there's a question for you too. How do you make reggae feel special and unique in a world where people may feel the need to move past it? How do you push artists to evolve, or do you push artists to evolve?
Well, I remember back when we wanted to give a new look to a certain artist, but they just refused. They didn't want to have a new look.
Right.
So we just have to go along with their way. You can convince them, say, this is not the way to go. You have to dress better, you have to talk better, you have to go to school to be in a big arena like America. Mm-hmm. But some people doesn't want that, so we just have to allow them. You can encourage them all you can, but as I say, you can bring the horse to the stable, but you can't force them to drink the water.
Yeah.
So we try our best to showcase them in different arenas. We have, every year, as I said, we do shows and events where we draw a lot of Caribbean people and other culture also. But we have a lot of things to learn and to do to improve reggae music.
Yeah.
You know,
That's exciting, right?
Yeah,
Still
we
got
have a lot
space
to
to go.
learn and a lot to do in the big America.
I like that.
But
one.
we are progressing. We are.
Yeah, that's great.
Little by little, we are.
Melanie, what revenue streams are becoming more important for independent labels in an era where streaming dominates music consumption?
I mean, there's the two streams is like the long game and the short game. The short game is the physical product, right? You make the money up front, you sell the record, you take the money, like you have it. That's it. That person owns it now, and that's all the money you've got from them. Streaming is the long game, you know. The deal is not as good. You're getting less money each time somebody listens to something, but they're basically paying every time they listen to it. So you'll make that money over time. You'll see as an album is out longer, the more promotions you do for that album as time goes on, like you can keep those streams up and those listens up and those downloads up. So I see those as still like very huge viable streams for us, but the other side is licensing, honestly. Like a lot of our artists will make back money that they need for touring or other things through like a big licensing sync for TV, film, a video game, a commercial. And I feel like the stigma on those isn't as harsh anymore now because people know artists need that money to survive. And it's not selling out, it's just, and you get to decide who uses your music too, you know? So I think that's been a big avenue for us that we've pursued pretty heavily.
Thank you. And I have to say, I'm honored that all three of you have agreed to join me today for this discussion. Thank you so much. You
Thanks for having us.
each have remarkable stories, remarkable labels, and so please give a big round of applause for Ghazi from Empire, Melanie from Melanie Cian from Rough Trade, and Miss Pat from BP Records. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.